So,
Okay.
if the
Hey,
recording,
Tracy. Thank you.
yeah, they're okay. They're
That's why I
popping in
can't
now.
see anybody because
That's
everybody's
great.
got their camera up. I'm like,
I see
hello,
our recording has started, so I
ma'am.
want to welcome you all to our first session today for our problem solving protocol. We are so excited to have Judy Elliott back with us in South Carolina, in a sense, in South Carolina. She participated in our first ever MTSS Summit back in October, where many of you asked for more. And so she was gracious enough to schedule this webinar series for us so we could give you more on the problem solving model. Want to let you know that in the chat, you will find the resources for today, and you will also find a link for an evaluation, very quick, couple of questions. We'll drop it in again at the end so you can give us some feedback. And I know Judy's got a lot to cover today, so I'm going to flip it over to her so she can get rolling.
Thanks so much. Hey, everybody. How y'all doing today? Thumbs up. Right on. I'm going to be asking you to put some things in the chat. Charlene's driving. Wow, you're brave. Keep your eyes on the road, Charlene. And we're recording this, so everybody knows. I'm gonna just for the starters, you have a link to the Google Drive that has everything in it. And so I'm just going to walk you through right here. It's called the Problem Solving Series. Session 1 is today. And if you open it, and please put in the chat if you don't have it or you don't have access to it. How I do these, I will give you the PowerPoints with slides 3 to a page if you want to take notes on them, and I will also give you full slides. So I will always give you 2 options if you want to do that. We had technical difficulties, so you didn't get the link earlier today because my email was getting blocked. So in the future, if you want to print off anything, you can do that. There's also some handouts in there. I have a folder in there that we'll talk about at the end, which is something I'd like you to take a look at for the next session we get together. And then the rest of the things in there we will be working with today. So any questions on that? I can see that we've got some folks talking in the chat. Okay, I'm on PC with no microphone and no camera. Okay, that's fine, Kelly. Thank you for joining us.
Judy is saying that you need to open up access. I sent the link to it. But
I do.
somebody is saying that the access is that they need access.
On whose end? My end?
I just copied the link from yours, so we will make, yeah. I think if you can copy the link from your computer,
okay,
and then put it in the chat, that will probably
yeah, because I've given everybody. All right, let me just do this. All right.
That'll just be a
Change at the
double.
bottom, Judy, it says general access restricted. Change that to anyone with the link and it should work.
Oh, it is restricted. I'm sorry about that. Usually, yeah, I missed that.
Perfect. Thank you.
I missed that. Sorry. Yeah. Okay, then I put it in the thing. All right, very good. Thank you. Okay, so what we're going to do in the time we have, thanks, Tracy, what we're going to do in the time we have today, which is very quick. We have the luxury of having several sessions so we can, get through the predominant of this today. Because we had technical difficulties, we're going to be limited in some of our things because we just couldn't get things set up in time. So here's what we're going to do today, just really briefly. Common language, common understanding of MTSS. We're going to actually do a quick review of the 5 sessions at the end, 6 sessions at the end. Sorry about that. And then we will probably do resources more today than anything. So let's just jump right into this. If you could, in the chat, what's your role? You can put a number, you can write it in. I just ask you to just, who are you? What do you do? Are you gen ed, special ed teacher, reading specialist, psychologist? All right, we have a district and administrator, supervisor. Good. Director. Kelly, thank you. Who else we got? RTI coordinator, state programs, special ed self-contained, awesome. Student service director, work skill specialist, fantastic. And y'all can see everybody in there. Literacy specialist, thanks, Cynthia. Special ed specialist. I think we got most everybody. Okay, great. Thanks for doing that. Helps me know who's on the call. So take a look at this and which TV show, and you can just type it in, or you can unmute yourself and say it. Which TV show depicts your last couple weeks of school? Because we all know we're getting into that springtime fever-ish. And so I figured, what depicts your last couple weeks of school? Has it been This Is Us? Has it been more like a basketball game? Has it been survival? How's it been going? Judge Judy, woohoo! Love that. Survivor, thanks, Angela. I know you have to think about it. Mythbusters, Survivor. Okay. Walking Dead, Tony. Lots of Mythbusters. No Happy Days. Basketball game. Ring Circus, I get that. Anybody else? All right. So I've done this with you. Thank you all for doing that. I appreciate your participation. Those that are driving, keep both hands on the wheel. I went through the materials with you today. You've got slides, you've got the 4-step problem-solving protocol in there. You've got 6 components in there. So if you want to open your handouts and keep those handy, I will refer you to them as we get into it. But the 2 things we're going to look at today for sure are the protocol and the 6 components. I've given you a couple options with that. So if I go into the handouts here, there's 2, I gave you 2 options for the protocol, and you can see that one's color coded beautiful and one's just your basic standard. Sometimes they get a little wonky when they get into Google. And then the flyer for the sessions are in there, and then you can see that there is a one or 2 pager of the documents we're going to look at today. So, all right, with that, what pops into your head? Just put it in the chat box. When you hear the words or the 4-letter word MTSS, what pops into your head? Knowing that we're going to be talking about problem solving this series, but what in general pops into your head when you hear that? Go ahead and do that real quick. Framework, procedures, and support. Okay, let me just, what else what do you think of? Framework to support all students. Okay, I think I've got that. Okay. And you don't have to be, intensive. Yeah. Supplements and intensive interventions. Good. What else you got? Meeting the needs of all students. Give me at least one more. What? No one more? Thank you. Tears. All right. So I'm just pulling these up because I know y'all know them, catch them where they are. Lots of misconceptions. Amen to that. Whole student. Yes, absolutely. This is what this is about. And so there are a number of documents that your state has put together, and I just reference it here. You have this if you ever want to look at it. If you haven't looked at it already, you've got your own sort of framework and guidelines to it. What we're going to focus on, as we always do, and your state has focused on these 2 through the SAM, which is the self-assessment of MTSS. The critical components of MTSS are there's 6 of them and you can see them. They all lead to the multiple tiers of instruction. You got problem solving, which is what the series is about, data evaluation, which is also part of problem solving. Communication is so important. Infrastructure, how do you create time in your schedules to allow kids more time to get access to what they need? Leadership, top of my list doing this work, because it really is about relationships and it's about having people feel safe to take risks and do things that may be out of their comfort zone, all leading to the multiple tiers of intensive support. So the 1-page, 2-pagers in there, I gave you just the components laid out with a couple bullets next to each one that sort of gives you the highlight of each one of those. So that's just for your own perusal and looking at that. If you look at the problem solving process, common problem solving process is used with Fidelity. We're going to use that within our teams, grade level teams, school leadership teams. We will look at student growth in step 4 to make decisions on how do we know it's working well. So I always like to show this slide because without those 6 components, without the framework that your state has put together around the self-assessment of MTSS, we really don't have a framework. We have pieces and parts to a bike, if you will. With a framework, we can actually work a little bit better, a lot better, knowing that we've got pieces and parts that we need to address as we do this. The SAM, as you all know, if you haven't seen it, I'm sure you've seen it, and some of you've probably taken it. It is from the University of South Florida. When Dr. George Batch was the director of the center, they created this. It's the only nationally validated assessment for you to go in and do an assessment of how you're doing in your MTSS. This is not about having your district take it. It's not about having your entire school take it. It's really about your leadership team that has to look at the health and wellness of your buildings. If you're trying to do MTSS on your own, you can certainly do this. I always tell people if you want to build an MTSS house, these are the foundational walls. The 6 components are the foundational walls that you need to address. It doesn't tell you what color to paint the walls, but it tells you, here are some things that you need to do to say that you're absolutely optimizing and implementing MTSS. Tremendous, tremendous resource. So I always say this one with y'all because I know you all have lots of things going on, and I'm sure some of you have been doing this work for a very, very long time. One of the things I find in doing this work for a long time is that we admire data a lot. We don't necessarily know what to do with the data. So this problem solving process is going to show you how to use your data to problem solve, to make, I always say, go down the right rabbit hole. There's a lot of time in education that we do things and we put all of our energy into it and nothing happens in a positive outcome. And we're like, wow, it didn't work. Sometimes we do that because we went after the wrong, if you will, the wrong target behavior or target problem. And I always call that going down the wrong rabbit hole. So what we want to do, since our time and energy is so precious in teaching and learning, we want to make sure we go down the right rabbit hole every time. And so thank you, Misi, with your comment about the SAM. Yes, I appreciate that. And so I think y'all have access to the chats as we go. So just as a, you can put this in the poll as well. In your school district department, whatever your perch is, there's a common understanding that there's 6 critical components of MTSS. You can do strongly agree, N, D, or SD. If you could just give me that, because that's really step 1. What's the common language, common understanding? Do we all understand that there are 6 critical components? Just give me a quick thing in the box with that. Okay, thank you. We've got an agree, we've got neutral. Neutral's usually because I'm not really sure if we do or we don't, or there's some people that do and some people that don't. Okay, it's a great place to start. Okay, thanks, Tracy. Okay, I like to always just do a quick review of this, even though you know the SAM and you know, because a lot of people, when you talk about MTSS, all they do is think about the 3 tiers. They just think about the 3 tiers. And it's way bigger than that. Leadership, you got to have relationships with people before you can actually have them do things and go out on a limb for kids and do some things that may be out of their comfort period. So, so we've got some disagrees. Tony, I think that is, I can't, okay, yeah. Tony's saying you're revamping in a revamping period after some personal changes. Great. It's continuous improvement. It's moving forward. So what I want us to think about as we do this series together is how do we make sure that people get to know that it's not just about the tiers? And I always ask people to think about replacing the word intervention with intensive instruction. So as we are looking at figuring out what we're going to do with kids, how do we intensify the instruction, not necessarily put them in an intervention, if you will. So these are all the resources that your state has put together. There's the umbrella where everything fits. There's your circle with the equity with the 6 components. So you've got, this should not be new to all of you, but I always like to show people the resources that sometimes we don't know. So evidence, so we have a common language, common understanding. Just look at the green. It's really about database problem solving. And a lot of times that is the backbone of this work, and we don't necessarily do it, or we don't know how to do it. So that's what we're doing. Vary intensities. Yep, those are the tiers. How do you intensify your instruction for kids that need it versus saying, I'm going to put them in a tier 2 or a tier 3. And it's need driven, which means that the cohort of kids that you have are not going to be the same this year as they were last year. So we need to make sure that we're fluid in how we set schedules and how we group students, whether you're in high school or whether you're middle and elementary. So, and it's really about how do we accelerate, not just sort of close the gap. So keep that, in your PowerPoints there so you have it. The other thing that I always like to say, and you can do a thumbs up or an amen if this is something that you deal with on a regular basis, but we have to ask 3 questions. What do all kids need? And what does everybody do to support all kids versus saying those kids go to Judy? What do some kids need? And what does everybody do to help those some students? And then what do few students need? And what does everybody do to help a few students? So everybody has skin in the game, or we have to make sure that people have skin in the game. So they don't just say, okay, that kid's going to go down the hall and get his needs met. This is about all kids, high expectations. What does everybody do to help everybody in all those 3 tiers? So what I'd like to just say before we move on is that this really is not a program or an intervention. It really is a way of thinking. And so the thinking, as y'all know, is you can't do an MTSS presentation without at least one triangle. So in the middle of that triangle is the problem solving process. And we'll talk about that in a second. Tips and versus the 4-step problem solving process. So you can see all kids tier 1, some kids tier 2, a few kids in tier 3. And this is about integrating, as somebody said earlier, the whole child, both academic and behavior, social emotional learning, social emotional well-being, all of that together integrated so that we make sense of all this. So this is not about a new initiative. As you know, I know I'm speaking to the choir. This is about integrating what we know works. So MTSS decision-making. So let's just do a quick review of this. The purpose of database decision-making, as you know, is to monitor the rates of individual kids or groups of kids, to determine which kids are doing well, which kids are floundering a little bit, and which kids really need a life preserver. And then the third part of the database decision-making is what do we do about it? And that's where you get all of that yummy stuff is in the problem solving process. So what's the rationale for the 4-step? As we go through this, and I'll make a comparison with the tips in a second, any kind of problem solving process, whether it's the team initiated problem solving, or whether it's the one that I'm going to do with you today. And I'm missing the slides and oh, there it is. Okay. So the reason why you jump into a problem solving process is for really 2 reasons. Everything that you've done, evidence-based practice that you've tried with your student or students has not worked, and you don't really know what to do next. So instead of throwing, spaghetti against the wall, we say, okay, now we're going to problem solve, and we're going to make sure we go down the right rabbit hole. So we've done all of these yummy things. We've collected our data. We've given it time to kick in. Nothing works. I don't know what to do. You kick into problem solving. And we're going to talk about when you do this problem solving, how you look across instruction, curriculum, the environment, and the learner. A lot of times in education, we go right for the learner, and we don't look at what the environment or what the curriculum and instruction has weighed in on. So I'm going to teach you how to do that. So the one that is popular in some states, and South Carolina uses it, is the team initiated problem solving. It is exactly what we're doing, and I'll show you how I'm going to combine it for you. There's 5 steps, and developed by one of my favorite humans in the world, Bob Algazine and Horner. What we're going to do is I'm going to make it look like this. So step 1 is going to be identify the problem and identify your goal for us. And you'll see how I unpack this with you. Step 2 is right there, identify the solution and create it. We're going to hypothesize why things are happening. Step 3 is, implement your solution. Step 4 is those 2 last circles, monitor and make summative judgments about it. So the one that we're going to look at, and you'll see once we get into this, there's a pretty significant difference from all, plan, do, study, act. There's a whole bunch of different problem solving out there, but what none of them really do, in my opinion, is get to the step 2, which is problem analysis. How do we know what's really making the issue? What's the real problem? People say, well, the kid's absent from school, that's why they're not doing well in reading. Well, the kid's absence from school may be because he or she is not successful in reading, so they're just not coming to school. So if we go and do an attendance plan for the kid, we're going to miss the boat, because the real reason is the kid doesn't feel safe to read in class because they can't read. Does that make sense? So this is really about, what do we know the real issue is? So today what we're going to do is just a high-level review of step 1. Are there any questions about the combination of tips and the 4-step? Are there any questions about what I've shared with you today to this point? Please feel free to either come off mute, and I really encourage you to, talk along with me, or put anything you'd like to share in the chat box.
I like the chart that you showed with the steps and the directions, but what I was thinking is, because MTSS is such a school-wide thing, would that be one thing that you introduce to teachers, or kind of create a team so you can have buy-in while you're developing the system? Because sometimes if the right people aren't on those committees, are making those decisions on the back end, it's really hard to get buy-in. And like you said, a lot of the stuff the teachers are doing is just, you want to have a way to progress monitor it, so you make sure you're meeting goals and the interventions that you are using for your student population are effective.
Yes, and I don't know who asked that question.
My name's Jaleesa Newton.
Jaleesa, you rock. You hit every nerve that needs to be hit. So the leadership team is the critical piece of this work. So MTSS is a system. It's a district-wide, it's a school-wide, it's a classroom-wide, it's a student-wide. So yes, we want everyone. So the gold standard was you teach your leadership teams how to use this, as we say, why are all the 3rd grade kids late for school this year? Or why are all the 9th grade kids not doing well in algebra? And then the goal is for those leadership teams to take those back to their grade level meetings and department meetings. So as you learn this, as we go forward with it, yes, I use this all the time. It's the most important skill that a leader can have, is how to problem solve. And so I always, say, okay, so this happened. Why is the problem occurring? Step 2, why do we think it's occurring? So to your point, we want people to be using a problem solving process, because if we don't necessarily get to the root cause of what the real issue is. We put a whole lot of plans together that doesn't meet to the end. So to your point, we want everybody to know how to do this. And it's clunky at first, right? It's clunky at first. It's like, remember when you read your first IEP and you're like, oh my gosh, who came up with this? And now that you've read a bunch of them, it's a little bit easier to go through it. So here are all the levels, to your point of asking, that you can do problem solving with this process. The student, the classroom, grade level or department, school or district. So the question you asked is right here on the page. So all of this can, as I'm going to show you, any level of what you're working on can be used with this 4-step. So with the student and individual students saying, I think I used this example, a kid's absent from class all the time. Okay, what are we going to do about it? Oh, and I did that in algebra one. Huh, look at that. Algebra for the grade level department, school, low percentage of kids meeting growth targets. What's up with that? Why are what's going on with that? And then we dig into that through the problem solving process. So in your handouts, you're going to see a protocol that looks like this, or there's a plain one that doesn't have color coding. So if you want to pull that up just for reference, you can certainly do that. We're not going to do anything with it today. I just want you to have it with you. You might want to take notes on it as we go. Any questions? I'm just going to keep asking that because I can't see very many people, and I feel like I'm talking to myself. So just pop your questions in there. So let's talk about step one. And the only thing we're going to do today is just a high level review of step one. Next time we come together, we're going to, in earnest, complete that protocol. I'm going to give you an opportunity to review some things to help give you a context about where we're headed with this. So there's 5 elements to step one, and that seems like a lot, but really not. What's your initial concern? What raised your concern? What data is telling you that there's a concern? Where do we want you to be? Where should you be? Compared to your peers, how are they doing? And then what's that gap? So step one, 5 elements, easy. What do we want kids to do? What are they doing right now? What do we want them to do with the desired behavior? What are their peers doing? And what's the gap? So I'm going to give you, I was thinking about this today. Here's my example. Maybe I'm the only one looking at limiting calorie intake. So what do we want adults to be able to do? We want adults to healthy eat, limit your calorie intake. That's what we want everybody to do. What's the current performance? Well, this individual person is taking 3,500 calories per day, which is a lot, because your question goes, what are they eating? Are they exercising? If they're a triathlete and they do 35, that's probably not enough for a triathlete. Okay, but 35 calories. What's the desired performance? The desired performance is no more than about 1,900 calories per day. Cynthia, hi. Yes, okay. And so number 4 is, what's the performance of your peers? So people of your age, you know, they have all those BMIs, which I don't pay attention to because they're wacky. What's the performance? So typically people, I'm just gonna use myself, typically people of my age, female, blah, 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 1,900 to 2,000 calories per day. If you want to lose a little bit of weight and eat healthy. So what is the gap that we need to close? 3,500 minus 1,900. We've got to reduce the calorie intake by 1,600 calories per day. And I'm going to say over the next month. Does that make sense? Give me a thumbs up if that makes sense. Okay. Then you can certainly put a thumbs up or yes or a Y in the chat box so I can know that you're all with me. So that's the easiest way that I can, thanks, Tony. That's the easiest way. Want to eat healthy, limit your calories. You're currently adding, you're doing, thanks, Jenny, 3,500. We want you to be at 1,900. People my age and my, gender are doing about 19 to 100. Thank you, Ms. Graham. And we want to be 19 to 100 calories a day. We got to reduce by 1,600. Now your brain goes, what am I eating? What do I need to reduce? What are my good calories? So you get all of that. So here's another way to look at this. A secondary example. I can't do this like I do it because I'm on Zoom, but so here are 12 kids, 12 7th grade male kids. They're supposed to be by the blue line, which let's say it's attendance. It could be on time. It could be whatever. So when we look at the benchmark, the 7th grade, the rest of the 7th grade peers are right around the benchmark. give or take a little bit above and below. And then for kicks and giggles, let's look at the entire 7th grade, and we find out that they're all also as well near the benchmark. So do we have a 7th grade boy problem? Do we have a 7th grade problem? Or do we have a problem, if you will, with 12 7th grade kids? Either come off mute, stick it in the chat. 12, what is the problem? Is it the 12 kid problems? Yep. Anybody else? Yep. Thanks. So we really do. So if we per se, and this is what we do in education, thanks Tracy, if we were to say, oh my goodness, we've got a male problem with 7th grade boys, and we go in and do this whole intervention or this plan, it's not going to work because we only have 12 kids. The rest of the boys in 7th grade and the rest of the 7th grade is perfect. Here's another example, different kind of example. And I apologize, I can't do it little by little because it's what it is. So we've got 10 9th grade African-American kids. There they are, the little red bowl there. They're supposed to be by the blue line. Let's just say it's 80%. I don't know, could be anything, you pick. Suspension, attendance. So we compare these 9th grade African-American students to their peers, their 9th grade African-American peers. And what we find out is 38% of all of the African-American peers in 9th grade are down here, well below the benchmark. So for kicks and giggles, we're going to look at all of the African-American kids in the school. And guess what we find? They're all below benchmark. However, when you combine all kids together in 9th grade, we look like we're doing okay. But when you disaggregate it and you say, okay, we got 10 boys, 10 Black boys that are having an issue, compared to their peers, we got an issue with all the Black kids in this school. And then in 9th grade, and then 9th through 12th grade, we got a major issue here because everybody in 9th grade's doing well except these. What kind of problem is this? Is this a school-wide problem? Is it a kid problem? Just put in the chat, school or kid. Thanks, Tara. Tony, Angela. Woohoo! Right on. It's a systems problem. We got a problem with kids performing, African-American kids. This problem was totally different. We got 12 boys that are just being knuckleheads. So we need to just take care of these kids, whatever it is, because everybody else comparison. In this example, we got a totally different problem. So let's look at a behavior example. I'll use myself, Judy. Judy complies 35% of the time. So the benchmark by my teacher is 80%. 8 out of 10 times I ask Judy to do something, she's going to do what I ask her to do within a reasonable amount of time. Right now, I'm only complying 35% of the time, or 3.5 times, however you measure that. However, when we compare Judy's performance to the peers are only performing at 40%. They're also supposed to be performing at 80, but they're performing at 40. So look at the gap analysis on the bottom. The benchmark and target student. Benchmark is 80 and target is 35, and I'm the benchmark. Is there a significant gap? Yes or no? Okay, see head nodding. Yes. Now, I want you to put this in the chat box. The peer group and the target student. Peer group is 40, target student is 35. Is there a significant gap? Yes or no? You can come off mute. You can put it in the chat. All right. You guys are whiz bang smart. Yes, there is not a gap. 5% difference. So as a former school psychologist, I'd be asked to go in and observe kids. Excuse me. And I would go in to observe Judy, and she'd be the target kid that's going to get referred for behavior issues. But when I went in to observe classrooms, I wouldn't look at Judy. I'd look at the entire class. So in this case, Judy is the target kid, but everybody else in the classroom is having issues either. She's just swinging from the lights a little bit more proficiently than everybody else, but everybody's swinging from the lights. Does that make sense? So everybody, this is a class-wide issue. It's not a kid issue. It's not a peer issue. It's probably a classroom management issue. So there's supposed to be a peer, 80% compliance. This is Judy at 35. The 40% of the rest of the peers are here. We had a major gap going on. All right, moving on here. So fist to 5, I can't see you, so you're gonna have to put 1 through 5. How do you feel about understanding the quick elements of step 1? 1, you got little understanding. 3, you're good. 4, you got it. And you're brand new to this. We'll review it next week. All right. I like seeing the 3s and 5s. So critical that you start with using data. All right, so here is a quick review using a case study. I'm going to do high school today. Happy high school. And I know nobody looks like that. This is a happy high school step 1. Jenny, do you have a question? Oh, you have a 5. That's your fist of 5. Look at you. Thank you. Thanks, Jenny. All right. School leadership team gets together. Yeah, keep adding them. 3. Hopefully this will help clarify it a bit. School leadership team comes together. The superintendent comes to the high school graduation or happy high school and says, you got to raise your graduation rate to 92% by 2018. Now, this is a little outdated, but he comes and makes this announcement as a new superintendent in 2013. So they've got between 2013 and 2018 to get their graduation rate to 92. You can see where it is right now, 67, 65, 67. If they keep doing that, they're growing 2%. It's going to take them 11 and a half years to get where they need to be, and they don't have 11 and a half years. So how do you know that? Is the current rate is 69. We want them at 92. There's a 23 percentage point gap. If you divide it by 2 data points, which is just divide it in half, the growth rate, as you know, because you look at this, is 2% growth rate, and it's going to take them 11 and a half years to catch up. Kids will be collecting Social Security by the time they get to where they need to be. So, okay, so they know that there's an issue with graduation. So the school leadership team, and this could be a department, this could be a grade level team, this could be a teacher, says, okay, I want to look at my graduation rate by gender. And by looking at this, you can see that there's not a lot of differences between male and female. There's not a huge gap, but there is a little bit of a gap. So you're like, okay, so that's an interesting piece of data, but maybe not gives me what I need to know. So I'm going to keep digging at data because step 1 is all about what does your data say? So right now our goal is to increase graduation by 92%. Let's look at the data, which is causing it. So no surprise when you look at this, there are significant gaps between white and Asian kids with the kids with disabilities and economically disadvantaged. Although economically disadvantaged is the green one, it's kind of up and down. Native American is pretty steady. African American kids are going down. So we know that there is going to be some sort of gap. Is that the whole source? No, let's keep looking. Let's look by cohorts. This is what this group did. They looked by cohorts. From 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade, 9th grade, they tank when they come into high school. 10th grade, 11th grade, 12th grade. So they tank. And so what do you think are some hypotheses? Why are some reasons why kids coming into high school tank or drop in 9th grade? Either put it in the chat or come off on mute and just give some feedback. What do you think causes kids to fall off track in 9th grade? Adjusting socially. Yep. Different environment. Yep. They go from a nice cuddly, expectations are different. They're now going to 7 or 8 different teachers. They don't have one teacher where the support is not the same all day. Yep. Tracy. Puberty. Different environment. Yeah. So there's hypotheses. So yes, another hypothesis as to why it's happening is because the work's more difficult. It's not easy. High school's different. Puberty, absolutely. Distractibility, all of that. So what they did is they looked at the cohorts, and what they found is the kids really started dropping from 6th to 7th leveled off from 7th to 8th, because 6th to 7th is a big jump, and then they go down in 9th grade. But what you see in looking at this is they start to go back up in 10th or 11th, but they never make it back to where they were in 6th grade. So 9th grade is the killer for lots of kids. All right, so now we're going, okay, now we have a better idea about where we need to look. And this is a real school in North Carolina. They have early warning signs for their high school course failures, GPA, and attendance. And so we look at those. So course failures, 39% of the kids have 1 or more Fs, 61 have none. GPA is less than 2.0, or 78% of the kids have greater than 2.0. And their attendance, 17% have less than 95%. 83% of the kids have a 95% or greater attendance. Remember, there's 2 metrics when you look at attendance. 95% is the goal, but how many of the kids are meeting that goal? So knowing what we know about high school and the importance of 9th grade, which one do you think the school, Happy High School, looked at or should look at because of what we know about 9th grade? And I don't know how many of you know secondary well, but the data is really unequivocal that if 8th graders come in with 1 more D or F, they're going to be at high risk for not doing well in 9th grade. If kids have 1 D or F before the end of the first semester, they may be at risk for dropping out. So based on this, I'm just going to tell you, high school folks, they went after, how come we have so many kids? 39% of our freshmen, almost 40% of our freshmen have 1 or more F. That's like sirens going off. That is a sense of urgency off the chart. So, you know, I'm a secondary person, 78% or better, could be better. Yep. And attendance could be better, but this is, we have a risk of losing 40% of our freshman kids, either to really bad behavior because they're bored and not doing well, or they're just going to drop out and flunk. So they go a little bit deeper and say, okay, so now let's find out what's causing the Fs for our freshman kids. Now, remember, their goal is to raise graduation rate. And if they were just to say, okay, we're going to raise graduation rate without doing this data dive, they have no idea where to go. So when you look at this, English and history seem to be doing just fine. No surprise, algebra is a killer for kids. So what they find is right now, during the date that the superintendent said, here's what we're doing, 39% of the kids are failing Math 1. 27% of the kids that are taking probably an extra scoop or a tier 2, 27% of those kids are also not doing well. And then the failure rate for English and world history is way lower. So they go after the failure rate. So now think about it. Step 1. What's the identification? What do we want them to do? What's their current level of performance? What's their benchmark? And what's their peer performance and gap? So this is what we're going to work with the next time we get together. And what I'd like to do is going to put you in breakouts, but we aren't set up to do that today because of the technical difficulties. And I apologize for that. So I'm going to give you a minute to think about, go back through and look at those data slides all the way back to the graduation. And this isn't ideal, but we're not in breakouts. So what do you think the initial concern? I'm going to tell you what Happy High School came up with. What's the data that they used? What's the benchmark? What's their peer performance? What is their initial concern? What was their initial concern? Do you remember? Low graduation rate. Excellent. Thank you, Angela and Halisa. I don't know how to pronounce that correctly. Ms. Newton. So, and then secondary to that, low graduation rate, what did they find out that could be a cause for low graduation rate? Digging through the data, what did they find? Courses in math, 9th grade failures. Yes, failures. Excellent. The failures, remember, they looked at all sorts of data. Didn't find it. Okay, let's look at the early warning system. Whoa, it's math. So here's what it looked like. And you're right on. Increase the graduation rate to meet the target. 39% are off track in 9th grade due to course failures. Math is the greatest percent. So I'm going to walk you through this. I'm going to give you a minute to read it. We were going to do this a little bit more in breakouts, but we're not. So take a minute and read. This is their step 1 that they put together based on all the data I just shared with you. So take a second and read that. Okay, so their initial concern was graduation. Superintendent says you got to be up to 92% graduation. They're behind the overall district. They're behind their target that the superintendent set. So they looked at their early warning system and they find out that math is the predominant course causing issues with a large percentage of their 9th graders. What's the desired replacement behavior? Or other words, what do they want them to do that they're not doing? Well, they want to meet the graduation rate. They want to meet it or exceed it. And what I like about what Happy High School did here is first time 9th graders will all pass Math 1. So they want to get their kids through and passing first time through. We all know that some of these kids take it 2 or 3 times. So they want to meet or exceed the district target. And the other desired behavior is that all first-time freshmen will pass it the first time through. So what's their current level of performance? Graduation rate is 69. Their target is 92. Current level of performance is 39% of the kids, 9th graders, are failing Math 1. Where do they want them to be? By 2017, 2018, by 2017, they have to increase by 87%. So if you go back, and I can show you that real quick because I can slide through this. So by 2017, if you follow the trend line, they need to be pretty close to here in order to be on the right trajectory, if you just follow that line. So they should be to 87% by 2017. They want to get their pass rate to 80%, at least 80%. Because we know that tier 1, a good strong tier 1 is where you have at least 80% of your kids rocking and rolling and passing. So when you look at their peer performance, so they're in a state that you can look at their freshman data at the state, at least you could at then, I don't know now. Freshmen on track for graduation means they're passing everything, was 87%. The district that Happy High School is in has a track record of 87.6% of the freshmen in the other high schools in the district are on track. So the other other districts similar in the state show that they have high rates of on track for freshmen. 95, 92, 89. So that pure performance, and I'll just tell you a quick story. I was working with a very diverse district in Illinois, a high school that was very diverse, very low performing, lots of turnover of staff. And they were sort of, woe is me, we're never going to be able to increase our proficiency. We can't get our graduation rate up, la, 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 la. So we got on the Illinois website and we picked a school like this high school that had the similar demographic, size, all of that, and made the comparison with a like school in the same state and found out that like 90% of the kids were on track in 9th grade and they had like an 89% graduation rate, yada, yada. So what that came to was like, wow, if they can do it, we can do it. So making that comparison is really important. Just like the calorie intake. What should I be taking calories in for somebody my age? And okay, I hope that's making sense. So the gap right now, we know that the gap of where they are and where they need to be for graduation per the superintendent is 23%. We know the gap in math is we got to close 39% to less than 39% of the kids failing. And then the math rate intervention, we want to reduce the number of failures from 27%. All right, so either come off your microphone and talk to us. Does this make sense to you? We're going to go through this again and review it next time. I'm going to have you actually practice it with your own data. Talk to me about step 1. Does it seem to make sense? Does it have a bit of a flow? Talk to me. It's very lonely here. Feel free to come off mute so you don't have to type. Or type. What do you think?
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
So pretty much you come up with basically 2 goals rather than just one.
In
Yes.
this one, they did. Yes.
Okay. So not necessarily every time, but if there's
Yeah.
Another-
I mean, again, this is their work. It's sort of like you don't put more than one behavior in an objective that you're teaching. So I would really try to stick to one. If they do the pass rate, the spillover should be their graduation rate will go up. So to your point, I would target one behavior because it's so much easier to deal with.
okay, that makes great sense.
Great. Thank you for asking that question.
Yeah.
And Michelle said it helps us frame the data we already have. Yeah. Other comments or questions? I get super excited about this because I'm an evidence-based person and I've been doing this work for very, very many long time, decades. And I love this because it's not a frame or it's not a box, it's a frame. People think MTSS is a box, you got to fit within it. This problem-solving process that I'm teaching you lets you take whatever that you're not being successful with, use your data that you already have in most cases, drill down until you say, I think we found a rabbit hole. So what we found in this is that in order to increase their graduation rate, they got to look at their freshman kids and specifically how are you going to help them in their math? Because we got gaps to close. All right, so I did a lot of talking at you and I apologize for that. So for our next time we're together on March 18th, we've already gone through it. This is the protocol that's filled out. So if you want to look at it again, just to get it in your brain about how we did it, go through the PowerPoint slides I gave you to see how that rhyme or reason is. Because next time I would like you to come with some data of your own and work through step 1 using your own data so it makes sense. I'm going to always give you a case study to model, and then I'm going to ask you to use your own data. Then the other 2 things I would love you to do is read the Fast Facts problem solving. I'll pull it up, just page 1 and 2. Where is the handouts? Okay, it says review for session 2. Okay, so that's what that is. I'm going to try to keep them in. So this is the 4-step. This is the overall review of what we're going to go through. And all I said, just read page 1 and 2. You can read the whole thing if you want, but I'm just, this is just the overview of the 4-step problem solving process. This gives you a nice outline of what we just did for step 1. Next time we'll come together, we'll take another run at step 1, and then we will also look at step 2. the real thing and the other thing I want you to look at, please, is it's called the ISIL by Riot. This is going to be pivotal to our next session. I don't need you to do anything except with your favorite adult beverage. Take a look at it. Just familiarize yourself with it. This is where we're going to use a matrix to decide whether what's causing the problem with Happy High School. Is it an instructional issue? Is it a curriculum issue? Could it be the environment? Or could it just be the learner itself? And again, as I said at the onset, we always go to the learner before we look at the other two. So all I'd like you to do, please, is to, I gotta get out of this here, is to look at those two documents, Fast Facts and the ISIL by Riot, just to familiarize yourself of those 4 domains. And then when we get back together for March 18th, our forecast of what we're going to do is review step 1, really bring some data that you would like to look at. We'll dig into step 2, high overview, try to start digging into it, looking at our ISIL by Riot. And then we'll continue to go through it as we go through it. So I know that there is a evaluation that was just put in the chat box. I put, as just for sake of ease, these are the dates that we will be working together. So our next session is on March 18th, and you can see the rest of them that have been arranged. My email is on the very first slide of this PowerPoint. It always will be there. So if you have any questions, please email me. I will be happy to, yes, we will send out a reminder. Thank you for folks saying that. We'll send you a reminder about what to make sure you come prepared for and when the next date is. So please stay in touch. Any questions? Happy to email or jump on a call real quick. We have lots of fun learning to do together. So please think about bringing some data you'd like to problem solve, and you will walk through the 4 steps with your own data. So apologize for talking at you. I hope that this, made some sense to you. Again, I get excited about this because it's such a valuable tool. And I'm going to stop talking now, turn it back over to Deanna. Do you have any closing questions or thought? I really appreciate your participation, everybody, today. And double tasking, driving and doing other things. So thank you.
Thanks,
I
Judy.
loved it,
We
and I'm sorry I
appreciate it.
didn't. Sorry,
Go ahead, Shirley.
Go ahead,
I
Shirley.
loved it, and I'm sorry I didn't have a chance to participate more. I planned to be here an hour ago, and it didn't work out that way with traffic. But I really did enjoy this, and I did love the framework, as you said, to just do step 1, because it really elicits a lot more detail than a lot of even just with the 4-step problem solving. It just kind of helps. Helps you think of all those questions and take it deeper. So I look forward to using that tool.
It's a little tighter. It's a lot tighter, more tighter than the tips. And so, yes, in the protocol. And so thank you for being here. This is recorded. So if you want to go back, I'm sure the folks
I will
send you them. Yeah. Any
Yes,
other
I'll watch it
comments?
again.
Thank you for that, Charlene. Appreciate that. Okay. Deanna or Susan, anything?
No, Susan did put our evaluation in the chat. That's a certificate of attendance will be sent to you if you complete the evaluation. We look forward to seeing you at our next session in March. Thanks, Judy, for keeping us all engaged during this. I mean, I love hearing it chunked this way. My brain processes a whole lot better when we do it little bits at a time, and all the examples made sense to me. So I'm excited to review the next information and to move forward, and we'll again send out those reminders and the recording of today.
Yeah, and then
more
if you
time's
could,
up.
and again, I know Shelton didn't get it, but if we could just, and I know you'll do that, send out the resources because of the little technical difficulties we'll have. We'll make sure you have everything you need for session 1.
Mhm.
And then we'll remind you for session 2. Can't wait to see you all again in a little bit. So stay in touch.
All right. Thanks,
Thanks
everyone.
so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Don't end the meeting, Deanna, please.